The projector's blue light cut through the darkness of the room like a knife through silk. I watched my husband's face drain of color as his own text messages appeared on the screen behind him. 10 feet tall, impossible to ignore. "Baby, she's at work. Come over now." The timestamp read 9:47 p.m., last Tuesday. The same Tuesday he told me he had an extra Jiu Jitsu session. My hands weren't shaking. That's what surprised me most. I stood there in my burgundy dress, the one he'd complimented that morning, the one I'd chosen specifically for his birthday party, and I felt nothing but ice spreading through my veins. Around us, 60 people sat frozen. His mother's hand covered her mouth. His brother looked at the floor. And Tasha, my best friend, my sister, the woman who'd held my hand during my father's funeral. Tasha stood against the wall with tears streaming down her face, black mascara making rivers down her cheeks. "Aaliyah?" Marcus started, his voice cracking like a teenager's. I held up one finger. Just one. The universal sign for not yet. The projector clicked to the next image. A video this time. I'd debated whether to include it, whether this moment required mercy, but then I remembered all those nights I'd lain awake. My nurse's instinct telling me something was wrong. My heart arguing that I was paranoid, that love meant trust, that I was being crazy. I remembered every time I'd apologized to him for doubting, every time I'd convinced myself I was the problem. The video showed his car, the black Dodge Charger with the personalized plates that read discipline, parked in Tasha's driveway at 2 p.m. The camera timestamp advanced in fast forward, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. The sun moved across the sky in seconds. His car didn't. "I installed a dash cam 6 weeks ago," I said, my voice steady, clear, carrying across the silent room like a bell. I told myself it was for safety, for insurance purposes. Funny how we lie to ourselves, isn't it? Someone's chair scraped against the floor. Pastor Williams, who'd married us 4 years ago in that beautiful ceremony where Tasha stood beside me in lavender, promising to protect our union, cleared his throat but said nothing. What could he say? The evidence spoke louder than any sermon. Marcus took a step toward me. His hands were up, palms out, like he was approaching a wounded animal, like I was the dangerous one in this room. "Baby, please, can we talk about this somewhere private?" I smiled then. I felt my lips curve upward, felt the expression settle on my face like a mask I'd worn before, in the hospital, when I had to tell families there was nothing more we could do. That practiced professional smile that said, "I'm sorry for your loss." "You always wanted freedom, Marcus," I said, reaching for the microphone someone had set up for birthday toasts. My voice echoed through the speakers now, huge and undeniable. "Now you have it." Then I walked out, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor, leaving behind the man I'd loved and the life I'd built, with 60 witnesses and no more secrets. Before we go back to where this all started, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments. Whether you're in New York, Lagos, London, or São Paulo, heartbreak speaks the same language everywhere. Let me know where you're from. And let's continue this story together. 3 months before that birthday party, I woke up at 5:47 a.m. to the sound of Marcus's alarm. He always set it 13 minutes before the hour, some superstition from his wrestling days in high school. Lucky number 13. I used to find it charming, back when everything he did seemed intentional and meaningful. Back when I still believed that the small quirks of a person revealed their depth, rather than their limitations. The bed shifted as he rolled over, his hand finding my hip in that unconscious way that married people touch each other. Familiar. Reflexive. I kept my eyes closed, listening to his breathing change from sleep to wakefulness, feeling the Atlanta. Humidity already pressing against our bedroom windows even though summer hadn't officially started. "You awake?" he whispered. "Barely," I lied. I'd been awake for 20 minutes already, my mind cycling through the day ahead. 2 surgeries scheduled, 3 new admits from overnight, the quarterly review meeting with administration that I'd been dreading for weeks. Insomnia had been my companion since nursing school, a constant hum of worry that I'd learned to live with like tinnitus. "You stop fighting it eventually. You just get up and make coffee." Marcus kissed my shoulder, then my neck, his beard scratching against my skin in a way that used to send electricity through me. That morning, I felt it like a memory of feeling, like looking at a photograph of a place you used to love. "I've got early clients," he said, already pulling away, already standing, already in motion. Marcus was always in motion, running, training, coaching, lifting, rolling on the mats. He had the kind of body that required constant activity to justify itself, like a sports car that needed to be driven fast or it would rust. "Probably won't be home until late. Thursday's my advanced Jiu Jitsu class, remember?" I remember. I opened my eyes then, watching him move through the pre-dawn darkness of our bedroom. We'd painted it a soft gray 2 years ago, arguing gently about whether it was too dark, too cold. I'd wanted warmth. He'd wanted modernity. We'd compromised, which meant we'd done what he wanted and I'd convinced myself I'd chosen it too. He pulled on his training clothes, black compression pants, a fitted t-shirt with his gym's logo across the chest. His body was a monument to discipline, every muscle defined, every movement precise. Women noticed him everywhere we went. I used to feel proud of that. "Look what I have. Look who chose me." "You working a double?" he asked, checking his phone. The blue light illuminated his face from below, making him look unfamiliar for a second. Stranger-like. Probably. "We're short-staffed again," Deshaun called. "Out yesterday, and if his back's still bothering him..." I stopped myself. Marcus's eyes had already glazed over. He didn't care about hospital staffing issues. He cared about hospital staffing issues when they affected him, when they meant I'd be too tired to cook or too stressed to be agreeable. But the actual details of my work, the weight of it, the way it sometimes felt like carrying other people's mortality around in my scrubs like loose change, that didn't interest him. "You should tell them no sometimes," he said, that familiar edge of criticism wrapped in concern. "You let them walk all over you." I swallowed the response I wanted to give, that my saying no meant someone's grandmother didn't get her medication on time. That my saying no meant a 19-year-old gunshot victim bled out while waiting for someone who cared less than I did. That my saying no wasn't a luxury I had in a trauma center in Midtown Atlanta, where the waiting room was always full, and the moral weight of triage decisions kept me awake at night, even more than the insomnia did. "I'll try," I said instead. The lie of the accommodating wife. "I'll try. I'll think about it. You're probably right. The small surrenders that keep a marriage smooth." He kissed me goodbye, quick, efficient, already mentally gone. And I listened to his footsteps down the stairs, the jingle of his keys, the garage door opening and closing, then silence. The house settled around me like a held breath. I got up and made coffee in the French press my mother had given us as a wedding gift. Pastor Aaliyah Carter believed in the ritual of things, in taking time even when time was short. "You can tell a lot about a person's soul by how they start their day," she'd told me once. "Do they rush into chaos, or do they create a moment of peace first?" I created my moment of peace. I stood at the kitchen window watching the sunrise, paint our backyard gold and pink, holding my coffee mug, the one that said, "Nevertheless, she persisted," that Tasha had given me for my birthday 2 years ago. And I told myself that this feeling, this low-grade dissatisfaction humming beneath my ribs was normal. Marriage wasn't supposed to be exciting after 4 years. Romance faded. Partnership remained. That's what the book said. That's what my mother's marriage counseling client said. That's what I'd convinced myself was wisdom rather than resignation. My phone buzzed. "Tasha." "Girl, you up? I can't sleep. This new skincare line is stressing me out. Why did I think I could launch a business?" I smiled despite myself. Tasha could make chaos feel like adventure. She'd been my best friend since college, since that first day in our dorm when she'd walked in wearing a full face of makeup and 6-inch heels and announced, "I know I look crazy, but I had a date and he stood me up, so now you're stuck with me." We'd been inseparable ever since. She'd held my hand when my father died during our junior year. I'd held hers when her engagement fell apart 6 months before the wedding. We were sisters in every way that mattered. "You'll figure it out," I texted back. "You always do. Coffee later?" "Can't today, babe. Meeting with potential investors. But this weekend, girls' night, I'm thinking wine and face masks and trash TV. It's a date." I finished my coffee, showered, twisted my hair into a neat bun, and put on my scrubs. Navy blue. Professional. I clasped my small gold earrings, my grandmother's, the only jewelry I wore to work, and studied myself in the mirror. 33 years old. Tired eyes that I covered with concealer. A face that still looked young. Until you noticed the tension around the mouth, the worry lines between the eyebrows that were starting to stay even when I wasn't frowning. "You're doing fine," I told my reflection. Another lie, but a necessary one. The kind you tell yourself to get through the day. The drive to Grady Memorial took 40 minutes in morning traffic. I listened to a true crime podcast, something about a woman who'd disappeared in the 80s, something that let me think about other people's tragedies instead of the vague unease in my own life. Atlanta sprawled around me, beautiful and broken, thriving and struggling, a city of contradictions that somehow felt like home. I parked in the employee garage, swiped my badge, and walked into the organized chaos of a level Y trauma center at 7:15 a.m. The smell hit me first, antiseptic and coffee, and something underneath that you could never quite name, the smell of bodies under stress, of illness and healing happening simultaneously. "Aaliyah, thank God," said Brenda, the night shift charge nurse, her eyes exhausted above her mask. "We've got a mess. GSW to the abdomen in Bay 3, possible stroke in 5, and a MVA with multiple traumas coming in 10 minutes. Deshaun didn't show, and Christina called out sick." I dropped my bag in my locker and tied on my surgical mask. This was the part I was good at. This was where the insomnia and the anxiety and the constant vigilance that made me a difficult wife made me an excellent nurse. I could see 3 steps ahead. I could anticipate problems before they became crises. I could hold someone's life in my hands and keep my voice steady while I did it. "Let's go," I said, and stepped into the controlled chaos, into the place where I made sense, where my worth was never questioned, where I knew exactly who I was supposed to be. If only I'd known that 10 hours later, leaving work early for the first time in months, I'd drive past Tasha's house and see Marcus's car parked in her driveway, and everything I thought I knew about my life would crack open like an egg dropped on concrete. But that morning, I didn't know. That morning, I was still the woman who trusted her husband and believed her best friend, and thought that if she just worked hard enough and loved well enough and asked for little enough, she'd be safe. That morning, I was still innocent. The gunshot wound in Bay 3 didn't make it. 22 years old, caught in crossfire outside a gas station on Boulevard, 3 bullets in his abdomen and 1 through his lung. We worked on him for 47 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. Because time becomes elastic in trauma situations, stretching and compressing until you can't tell if you've been doing chest compressions for 2 minutes or 20. His mother arrived just as we called it, and I had to walk her to the quiet room, hold her while she collapsed, tell her the words that no parent should ever hear. We did everything we could. It's a lie, that phrase. We didn't do everything. We couldn't bring him back from the dead. We couldn't undo the bullets or rewind time or make the world less violent. But it's the lie we tell, because it's the only comfort available. And sometimes comfort matters more than truth. By 3 p.m., I was running on adrenaline fumes and the energy bar I'd shoved in my mouth between patients. My feet ached in my nursing clogs. My shoulders carried the particular tightness that came from hours of physical labor mixed with emotional weight. Brenda had been right. It was a mess of a day. The kind that made you question everything about your career choices while simultaneously reminding you why you'd chosen this work in the first place. I was charting notes on the stroke patient when Dr. Okonkwo stopped by the nurse's station, his surgical cap still on, exhaustion written in the set of his shoulders. He was one of the good ones. A surgeon who actually listened to nurses, who remembered that we saw things he didn't, who treated us like colleagues rather than servants. "You staying for the double?" he asked, signing off on a prescription order. I hesitated. The old Aaliyah would have said yes automatically, The Aaliyah who'd been awake since 5:47 a.m., who'd held a dying boy's hand and comforted his mother, who'd been running on 4 hours of sleep for weeks, that Aaliyah was tired, bone tired, soul tired. "I think I'm going to go home," I heard myself say. The words felt strange in my mouth, revolutionary. Christina should be back tomorrow, and the evening shift is fully staffed for once. Dr. Okonkwo raised his eyebrows. "You feeling okay? Should I check you for fever?" Aaliyah Carter leaving work early might be a sign of the apocalypse. I managed a laugh. Maybe I'm finally learning that boundary thing everyone keeps talking about. Good for you. Get some rest. You've earned it. I changed out of my scrubs in the locker room, moving slowly, my body heavy with the particular exhaustion that came from holding space for other people's emergencies all day. I pulled on jeans and a soft t-shirt, let my hair down from its bun, and felt the headache that had been building since noon pulse behind my eyes. I'd go home, take a long bath, maybe cook something that wasn't microwaved. Maybe I'd surprise Marcus. He'd be at Jiu Jitsu until 8 or 9, but I could meal prep, have dinner ready when he got home. Maybe we could reconnect. Maybe that vague dissatisfaction I'd been feeling was just exhaustion, just the natural wear of working too hard and loving too little. The afternoon sun hit me like a wave when I walked out of the hospital. Atlanta in late spring was a specific kind of humid heat, the air thick enough to taste. I drove with the windows down, letting the wind mess up my hair, listening to Mary J. Blige, because she understood complicated feelings about men in a way that felt like church. I wasn't planning to drive past Tasha's house. That's what I told myself later, when I was trying to reconstruct the moment everything changed. I was taking my normal route home, the one that cut through Virginia Highland, past the cute bungalows with their perfect front porches and expensive renovations. Tasha had bought her place 2 years ago, a small victory in her constant battle to prove she'd made it, that the girl from College Park who'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 siblings could live in a neighborhood where the coffee shops had Wi-Fi passwords and the grocery store sold $18 hummus. I'd been to her house dozens of times, helped her pick paint colors, assembled IKEA furniture, sat on her back deck drinking wine and talking about dreams and disappointments, and all the ways we were trying to become the women we'd imagined we'd be. So when I turned onto her street, it was muscle memory, habit, the route my car knew, and that's when I saw it. Marcus's black Dodge Charger. Parked in her driveway, those personalized plates, discipline, catching the afternoon light like a taunt. I didn't stop. My hands kept the wheel steady, my foot stayed on the gas, and I drove past like I hadn't seen anything. But my heart had already started doing something strange in my chest. A rhythmic flutter that I recognized from work, from patients in distress, from the moment before something terrible happens and the body knows it before the mind does. There's a reasonable explanation, I told myself. There's always a reasonable explanation. Maybe he was visiting Tasha's brother. No, wait. Her brother lived in Decatur, not with her. Maybe he was dropping something off. Maybe Tasha had car trouble and he was helping. Maybe they were planning a surprise for me, a birthday party or an anniversary thing. Maybe. I pulled over 3 blocks away, my hands shaking now, my breath coming shallow. The nursing part of my brain cataloged the symptoms. Acute stress response, activation of sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight preparing to kick in. The wife part of my brain was screaming a single word. No. I called Tasha. My fingers felt numb as I scrolled to her name, as I pressed call, as I held the phone to my ear. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey girl, how's work?" Her voice sounded normal. Bright. Maybe slightly breathless. But that could have been anything. Could have been, it's good. Crazy day. I actually left early. I kept my voice steady, casual, just calling my best friend to chat. "Where are you?" "Just at home. Working on some content for the rebrand." "Why, what's up?" "Just at home." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Just at home, where Marcus's car was parked, where my husband was, allegedly, supposed to be at Jiu Jitsu practice across town. "Nothing," I said. "Just wanted to see if you were free for that coffee we talked about." "Oh, babe, I wish I could, but I'm slammed today." "This weekend, though, for sure. We still on for girls' night?" Yeah, I said. Yeah, we're still on. Perfect. Love you, girl. Love you too. I hung up, sat in my car on a tree-lined street in Virginia Highland, while the world continued around me. People walking dogs, a FedEx truck making deliveries, someone mowing their lawn with precise diagonal stripes. Normal life, the kind of Tuesday afternoon where nothing dramatic happens. Where husbands are faithful, and best friends are loyal, and the small lies we tell ourselves to get through the day actually hold up under pressure, except they don't. Except, sometimes you drive past your best friend's house and see your husband's car and hear her lie to you on the phone, and the small lies crack open, and the truth comes spilling out like infection from a wound you didn't know you had. I should have driven home. I should have trusted. I should have done what the old Aaliyah would have done. Made excuses, rationalized, convinced herself she was being paranoid and jealous and crazy. All the words women use to gaslight themselves into ignoring their intuition. Instead, I drove around the block and parked on the street behind Tasha's house, where my car wouldn't be visible from her driveway. I walked up the alley, my nursing clogs silent on the pavement, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stood behind the fence separating her yard from the neighbor's property, hidden by an overgrown hedge, and I watched. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The house sat quiet, the windows reflecting the afternoon sun, giving away nothing. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe he really was just dropping something off. Maybe. The front door opened. Marcus stepped out first, wearing his training clothes, his gym bag over his shoulder. Normal, unremarkable. He turned back to say something, and that's when I saw her, Tasha, standing in the doorway wearing a silk robe, her hair messy in a way that wasn't artfully arranged for Instagram, and she was laughing. They were both laughing. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and the gesture was so intimate, so familiar, so completely unlike the efficient goodbye kiss he'd given me that morning, that I felt something fundamental shift in my chest, like a bone breaking, like a heart stopping, like the moment in the trauma bay when you realize the patient isn't going to make it no matter what you do. He kissed her. Quick, casual, the kiss of people who'd done it before, who'd do it again, who had a routine. Then he jogged to his car, and she stood in the doorway watching him go, and I stood behind a hedge watching them both, and the world as I'd understood it dissolved like sugar in water. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I'd imagined this moment before. Every married woman has, in her darkest 3 a.m. thoughts. And I'd always thought I'd fall apart, scream, break things, collapse under the weight of betrayal. But standing there in a stranger's backyard, watching my husband drive away from my best friend's house, I felt nothing but a cold, clear certainty settling into my bones. I walked back to my car, started the engine, drove home. The house was exactly as I'd left it that morning. The coffee mug still in the sink, the pillows arranged neatly on the couch, the wedding photo on the mantel showing 2 people who didn't exist anymore. I sat on those neatly arranged pillows and stared at that photo for 20 minutes, memorizing the face of the woman I used to be. The one who'd believed in forever, the one who'd thought love was enough, the one who'd been so wrong. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Heading to practice. Love you, I typed back. Love you too. The lie felt appropriate. We were both liars now. At least we had that in common. Then I did what nurses do best. I made a plan. Because if there's one thing trauma work teaches you, it's this. Emotion is a luxury you can't afford in a crisis. You assess the situation. You stabilize the patient. You determine the treatment. And sometimes the treatment is radical. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Marcus, listening to him breathe the easy breath of someone with a clear conscience. And I cataloged every moment of our relationship for signs I'd missed. The late-night training sessions. The way he'd started password protecting his phone 6 months ago. How Tasha always seemed to know details about his schedule that I'd never mentioned to her. The time I'd walked into a room and they'd both stopped talking. And I'd laughed it off, made a joke about secrets, never imagining the kind of secret they were keeping. My mother used to say that denial is the devil's lullaby. It rocks you to sleep while your house burns down around you. Pastor Aaliyah Carter had a sermon for everything, a biblical metaphor for every human failing. But that night, lying in the dark, I understood denial differently. It wasn't weakness. It was survival. It was the mind's way of protecting itself from truths too large to process all at once. Because accepting what I'd seen meant accepting that my marriage was a lie. That my best friend was a traitor. That every moment of the past 4 years, maybe longer, needed to be re-examined, reinterpreted, understood through the lens of betrayal. It meant admitting that I'd been a fool, that all my loyalty and trust and love had been currency spent on worthless goods. So instead, I built alternate explanations. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe they were planning a surprise party for me. My birthday was coming up in 2 months. Maybe Tasha was having car trouble and Marcus was helping. Maybe the kiss I'd seen was friendly. Mediterranean-style cheek kissing that had looked like more from my angle. Maybe the silk robe was just comfortable house clothes. Maybe. The maybes were a fortress I constructed brick by brick, each one less believable than the last. But together they formed a wall between me and the truth. Marcus rolled over at 5:47 a.m., his lucky 13 alarm piercing the darkness. His hand found my hip. "Morning, baby." I kept my voice steady. "Morning. You sleep okay?" You were tossing and turning. "Just thinking about work." The lie came easily. I'd been practicing all night. He kissed my shoulder and got up, moving through his morning routine. I watched him from the bed, studying him like he was a stranger, looking for signs of guilt or shame or anything that would give him away. But Marcus was Marcus, confident, easy, comfortable in his skin. If he felt any remorse about what he was doing, it didn't show. "You working late tonight?" he asked, pulling on his training clothes. "Probably." I paused, testing. "You?" "Yeah, got that advanced class. Might grab food with the guys after." He checked his phone, and I watched his face for any tell, any flicker of deception. Nothing. He was either an incredible liar, or I was crazy. I was starting to hope for crazy. After he left, I called in sick to work for the first time in 18 months. Brenda sounded genuinely concerned. "You never call out? You sure you're okay?" "Just need a day," I said. I think I'm fighting something off. Fighting something off. That was one way to describe it. I spent the morning deep cleaning the house, scrubbing bathrooms and organizing closets with the manic energy of someone trying to create order in one area of life because everything else was chaos. I found a receipt in Marcus's gym bag. Starbucks, 2 drinks, yesterday afternoon. The same afternoon his car had been at Tasha's. 2 drinks. One for him, one for her. Stop it, I told myself. Lots of people buy 2 drinks. Maybe one was for a student. Maybe he was thirsty and got 2 for himself. Maybe you're losing your mind. By noon, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. By 1 p.m., I'd texted Tasha. "Hey, random question. Was Marcus at your place yesterday?" The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again. When her response finally came, it was casual, breezy. "Yesterday? No, girl, why?" My hands tightened around the phone. "I thought I saw his car on your street when I was driving by." "Oh, yeah, he might have been at Trevor's. You know Trevor lives like 2 houses down from me, right? Marcus has been helping him with his home gym setup. Trevor. Tasha's neighbor. A real person who really existed, who really was setting up a home gym. The explanation was plausible. Perfect, even. Too perfect. Right, I typed back. That makes sense. You okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Just tired. Get some rest, babe. Love you. I stared at those 2 words, love you, and felt something curdle in my stomach. But I typed them back anyway. Love you too. The rest of the day passed in a fog. I went through the motions of normal life. Made lunch I didn't eat, folded laundry, answered work emails. I was playing a part, acting in a show called Woman Whose Life Isn't Falling Apart. The reviews were mixed, but I kept performing. My mother called at 4. I almost didn't answer, but Pastor Aaliyah Carter had a 6th sense for when her daughter was in trouble, and avoiding her would only make her more suspicious. Aaliyah Grace, why aren't you at work? How did you? Brenda goes to my church. She mentioned you called in sick. There was a pause, weighted with maternal concern. You never call in sick. I'm just tired, Mama. Tired or troubled. I closed my eyes. My mother could read me across phone lines, could hear the things I wasn't saying in the space between words. It was her gift and my curse. Both, I admitted. Is it Marcus? The question landed like a blow. Why would you ask that? Because you sound like I did when I found out your father was having his affair. I'd been 7 when my father left. Too young to understand the details, but old enough to remember my mother's face, the way grief had carved itself into her features like erosion. She'd rebuilt herself after that, found her calling in ministry, dedicated herself to helping other women navigate the wreckage of broken marriages. But the scar tissue remained, visible only to those who knew where to look. Mama, I'm not sure. I might be imagining things. What did you see? I told her, all of it. The car, the lie, the kiss, the alternate explanations I'd been constructing. She listened without interrupting, the way she listened to her congregation's confessions, with a patience that felt holy. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, baby, you know what you saw, but I could be wrong. You're not wrong, and you're not crazy. Your intuition is trying to protect you, and you're fighting it because the truth is too painful to accept. Her voice was gentle but firm. I've counseled enough women to recognize the pattern. The denial is normal. It's how we survive the initial shock. But you can't live there, Aaliyah. Denial isn't a home. It's a hotel room you check into during a crisis. Eventually, you have to check out and deal with reality. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. I don't know how to be the woman whose husband cheats. With her best friend. I'm not that person. You're not a type of woman, baby. You're a woman who's been betrayed. That's not your identity. That's something that happened to you. She paused. What are you going to do? I don't know. Yes, you do. You've always known what to do. Even when you were little, you had that quality. You'd assess a situation, figure out the truth, and act accordingly. You're doing it right now, trying to gather information, trying to be sure before you make a move. She sighed. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't confront him until you're certain. Don't give him the opportunity to lie his way out of this or make you feel crazy for questioning. If he's doing what you think he's doing, he'll deny it. He'll make you the villain for not trusting him. Get proof first. Protect yourself. After we hung up, I sat with her words. Get proof first. It felt calculating, cold, unlike the woman I'd always believed myself to be. I was supposed to be about love and trust and working through problems. I was supposed to give people the benefit of the doubt, to believe in redemption and second chances. But maybe that woman, the trusting one, the forgiving one, had been a luxury I could no longer afford. I opened my laptop and Googled GPS trackers for cars. The search results felt like a betrayal of my own values. But I clicked through anyway, reading reviews, comparing features, learning the vocabulary of surveillance. 30 minutes later, I'd ordered a small magnetic tracker that promised real-time location updates and 60 days of battery life. Expedited shipping would have it here by Friday. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Training's running late. Don't wait up! I stared at the message, parsing it for hidden meaning. Was he really at training? Or was he with her? The not knowing was its own kind of torture. Worse in some ways than certainty. I texted back, okay. Love you. Then I drove to Tasha's neighborhood and parked on a side street with a view of her house. I felt insane doing it, like a character in a bad Lifetime movie, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to know. Needed to see if the maybes I'd been building could hold up under observation. I waited for 2 hours, watching the light fade from the sky, watching normal people come home from normal jobs to normal lives. A jogger passed. A mom pushed a stroller. The FedEx truck made another round of deliveries, and at 7:43 p.m., Marcus's Charger pulled into Tasha's driveway. He got out of the car carrying takeout bags, Thai food from the place we used to go to for special occasions. He didn't knock. He used a key. He had a key to her house. The door closed behind him, and the lights inside went on, warm and golden, illuminating windows I couldn't see through. I sat in my car as darkness fell completely, as the streetlights flickered on, as the truth I'd been avoiding settled into my bones like concrete. This was real. This was happening. My husband was inside my best friend's house with Thai food and a key, and I was outside in my car with my denial crumbling around me like a sandcastle hit by a wave. I drove home. Let myself into the empty house. Looked at our wedding photo on the mantel. His hand on my waist, my head on his shoulder, both of us laughing at something the photographer had said. We looked happy. We looked in love. We looked like people who had never hurt each other, but people in photographs aren't real. They're just light and shadow, frozen moments that tell you nothing about what came before or after. About the lies hiding behind the smiles. About the ways love can rot from the inside while still looking perfect on the surface. I took the photo down and put it in a drawer. Then I poured myself a glass of wine I didn't drink and waited for my husband to come home from wherever he'd tell me he'd been. When he walked in at 10:15 p.m., sweaty and tired, I asked casually, "How was training?" "Brutal," he said, kissing my forehead. "We did this new drill that about killed me. Did you eat?" "Grabbed something with the guys after." The lie hung in the air between us, visible only to me. "That's good," I said. "I'm glad you ate." And I smiled at him the way I'd been smiling at patients for years when I knew they were dying but couldn't tell them yet. The practiced, professional smile that said, "Everything is fine. Everything is under control. There's nothing to worry about." The smile that meant, "I know exactly what's killing you, and I'm already planning the treatment." The GPS tracker arrived on Friday in a small, unmarked box that fit in the palm of my hand. I opened it in my car during my lunch break, sitting in the hospital parking garage where no one could see me. The device was smaller than I'd imagined, about the size of a matchbox, black and nondescript, the kind of thing that could hide in plain sight. The instruction manual promised it was waterproof, magnetic, and virtually undetectable, perfect for the wife-turned-detective, the nurse-turned-spy, the woman I was becoming and didn't recognize. I felt dirty holding it. Like I'd crossed a line into territory where good women didn't go, where trusting wives had no business being, but good women and trusting wives were luxuries for people whose husbands came home when they said they would, whose best friends didn't lie through their teeth while wearing silk robes in the middle of the afternoon. That evening, while Marcus was in the shower, I slipped out to the garage. My hands shook as I crouched beside his Charger, feeling along the undercarriage for a secure spot. The tracker clicked into place behind the rear wheel well, hidden and magnetic, a small piece of technology that would tell me truths my husband wouldn't. I was wiping my hands on my jeans when I heard his voice behind me. "What are you doing out here?" I spun around, my heart in my throat. Marcus stood in the garage doorway, towel around his waist, water still dripping from his shoulders. In the dim light, he looked like a stranger, or maybe I was finally seeing him clearly for the first time. "I thought I heard something," I said, the lie smooth as silk, like a cat or something under the car. He walked closer, and I forced myself not to move, not to look guilty, not to let him see the terror racing through my veins. He glanced under the car, saw nothing, shrugged. Probably just the neighbor's cat. That thing's always prowling around. He put his arm around my shoulders. "Come back inside. You're jumpy lately. Everything okay?" "Just tired," I said. "Always tired." It was becoming my default explanation for everything. The distance, the distraction, the way I was pulling away from him in increments so small he hadn't noticed yet. "Work's been crazy." "You should take a vacation," he said, kissing the top of my head. "We should take a vacation. Maybe go to Mexico or something. Get away, reconnect. The word was almost funny. You can't reconnect something that's been severed, that's bleeding out, that's dying cell by cell while everyone pretends it's still alive. "Maybe," I said. "That sounds nice." That night, after he fell asleep, I downloaded the tracking app on my phone and watched the little blue dot that represented his car sitting motionless in our driveway. Tomorrow, that dot would tell me a story. Tomorrow, I'd know for certain whether I was paranoid or perceptive, crazy or correct. I didn't sleep. Again. The insomnia that had been my companion for years had evolved into something sharper, more intentional. I lay awake and made plans the way I made care plans at work. Systematic, thorough, accounting for every variable. If the tracker confirmed what I suspected, I needed evidence beyond GPS coordinates. I needed something undeniable, something he couldn't explain away, something that would protect me when this all fell apart, because it was going to fall apart. I could feel it coming the way you feel weather changing, the pressure drop before a storm. Saturday morning, Marcus left early for a youth Jiu Jitsu class he taught at the community center. I watched the blue dot on my phone move across the map, from our house to the center, exactly where he said he'd be. For 45 minutes, the dot stayed put, and I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe my mother's trauma had made me paranoid. Maybe. Then the dot started moving again. Not toward home. Toward Virginia Highland. Toward Tasha's street. I watched it park in her driveway at 10:47 a.m., Saturday morning. When he'd told me he'd be at the center until 1, when he'd kissed me goodbye and said he loved me, when he'd looked me straight in the eye and lied without flinching. I sat on our couch, staring at that blue dot, and something crystallized inside me, a hardness, a clarity, the last threads of denial snapping like old rubber bands. I called Kendra, a nurse I worked with who'd been through a divorce 3 years ago. We weren't close friends, but we had that particular bond that comes from working trauma together. We'd seen each other at our worst, covered each other's shifts, held space for each other's grief when patients didn't make it. If anyone would understand, it would be her. "I need advice," I said when she answered. "The kind you don't want to give, but you know you have to." She was quiet for a moment. "He's cheating. It wasn't a question. How did you know?" "Because you never call me on weekends, and your voice sounds like mine did when I found out about David." She sighed. "Where are you?" "Home. He's with her right now." "Do you have proof?" "GPS tracker, but I need more. I need something he can't deny." Smart. David made me feel crazy for months. Told me I was paranoid and jealous and insecure. Then I found the messages, and he still tried to convince me I was misinterpreting them. She paused. "You need to document everything. Screenshots, recordings if you can get them legally, witnesses. And you need to separate your finances, open your own account, move some money where he can't access it. Protect yourself before you confront him." "I'm not ready to confront him yet." "Good. Don't be. Confronting before you're ready gives him time to hide things, delete things, turn it around on you. My therapist told me something that saved my life. The person who controls the narrative controls the outcome. If you confront him now, emotional and unprepared, he controls the narrative. But if you gather evidence, prepare yourself, choose your moment, you control it." After we hung up, I opened a new checking account online. Transferred money from our joint savings. Not enough that he'd notice immediately, but enough that I could survive if everything imploded. I felt like a traitor doing it, like I was the one breaking our vows by planning for a future without him. But survival isn't betrayal. Survival is just survival. The blue dot stayed at Tasha's house for 3 hours. 3 hours on a Saturday morning when he was supposed to be teaching kids how to fall safely, how to defend themselves, how to practice discipline and respect. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't gutting me. I spent those 3 hours going through our financial records, looking for patterns I'd missed. Credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Gas station purchases in neighborhoods I'd never visited. Small withdrawals from the ATM that added up to hundreds of dollars over months. He'd been covering his tracks, but not perfectly. No one ever covers their tracks perfectly. When the blue dot finally started moving back toward our house at 2:15 p.m., I closed my laptop and arranged myself on the couch with a book I wasn't reading. Casual, relaxed. The wife waiting at home. Trusting and unknowing. He came in sweaty and tired, exactly as he should be after teaching a class. "How was it?" I asked, not looking up from my book. "Great. The kids are really progressing. We worked on escapes today." He grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. "I'm gonna shower. Want to grab lunch somewhere after?" "Sure," I said. "That sounds nice." He headed upstairs, and I listened to the water start, listened to him washing away whatever the morning had been. And I added escapes to the list of phrases that would forever mean something different to me now. We went to lunch at a Mexican place we liked, and I watched him eat tacos and laugh at something on his phone and talk about his students with genuine affection, and I marveled at how easy it was for him. How compartmentalized. He could spend 3 hours with her, and then sit across from me an hour later and act like everything was normal, like he was still the man I'd married. Like our life together was real and solid and true. Maybe it was for him. Maybe men could do that. Split themselves into versions, keep the pieces separate, never let the contradictions touch. Or maybe he just didn't care enough for it to bother him. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I tracked his movements obsessively, watching the blue dot move between our house and Tasha's like a metronome keeping time to my heartbreak. I documented everything in a password-protected folder on my laptop. Screenshots, times, dates, patterns. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, supposedly Jiu Jitsu nights. The dot always ended up at her house. Saturday mornings when he had extra classes. Even one Wednesday afternoon when I was working a double, and he'd texted me missing you, sent from her driveway. I started carrying a small notebook, writing down details the way I wrote nursing notes. Objective observations, no emotion, just facts that would hold up under scrutiny. March 15th, 7:45 p.m. Car at Tasha's house. Claimed to be at training. March 17th, 2:30 p.m. 2-hour stop at her house told me he was running errands. March 19th evening. Stayed until 11 p.m. Said training ran late. The evidence accumulated like sediment, layer upon layer, building into something solid and undeniable. I still went to work, still took care of patients, still saved lives and comforted families and did my job with the same competence I'd always had. But I felt split in two. The professional Aaliyah who held it together, and the private Aaliyah who was quietly dying inside, who lay awake at night next to her husband and felt nothing but cold rage spreading through her chest like frost. Kendra checked on me daily. "How are you holding up?" "I'm functioning." "That's not the same as being okay." "I know." Tasha kept texting me like nothing was wrong. Planning our girls' night, sending me makeup tutorials, asking about work. Every message felt like a knife wrapped in silk. I responded minimally, buying time, playing the role of the friend who was just busy, just stressed, just dealing with work stuff. "You've been distant lately," she texted one night. "Everything okay?" "Just exhausted," I typed back. "Hospital's been insane. We need to get together soon. I miss you." I stared at that heart emoji for a full minute before I could respond. "Miss you too. The lies we were both telling would have been impressive if they weren't so devastating." My mother called every few days, checking in with the careful concern of someone who knew her daughter was in crisis, but couldn't force the confession. "You need to make a decision, Aaliyah. This limbo you're in, it's not sustainable." "I'm not in limbo. I'm preparing. For what?" "For whatever comes next." What came next, I was beginning to realize, needed to be big enough to match the betrayal. Not just confrontation. Confrontation was for people who wanted to save their marriages, who believed in counseling and second chances and working through problems. I was past that. I was in the territory of consequences now, of making sure that when this ended, it ended on my terms, with my dignity intact and their secrets exposed. Marcus's birthday was coming up in 2 weeks. Tasha had already texted about throwing him a party. "Let me handle everything, babe. You work too hard. I'll take care of the guest list, the food, the decorations. Just show up and celebrate your man. Your man." The possessive made me want to scream, but I texted back, "That's so sweet of you. Thank you." Because I was beginning to have an idea. A terrible, perfect idea that crystallized more clearly every time I checked the GPS tracker. Every time I saw them together in my mind. Every time I remembered the silk robe and the key and the Thai food and the casual intimacy of people who'd been betraying me for God knows how long. They wanted to celebrate Marcus. Fine. I'd give them a celebration they'd never forget. I started planning it the way I planned care for critical patients, methodically, accounting for every variable, preparing for every complication. And like any good nurse, I knew that timing was everything. Act too soon and the intervention fails. Act too late and the damage is irreversible. But act at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right approach, and you could change everything. Marcus's birthday party was going to be that moment. I just had to make sure I was ready. The night before Marcus's birthday party, I sat in my car outside a 24-hour FedEx store in Buckhead, staring at the USB drive in my hand. 3 weeks of GPS data. Screenshots of text messages I'd managed to photograph when Marcus left his phone unlocked on the bathroom counter. Timestamps and locations that painted a picture so clear a child could interpret it. And the videos, 2 of them, captured from my phone as I'd sat in that same spot behind Tasha's fence, watching my husband walk into her house like he owned it, watching him kiss her goodbye like it was routine, like it was normal, like I didn't exist. The fluorescent lights of the store hummed through my windshield. Inside, a tired employee reorganized shelves, waiting for customers who came to make copies in the middle of the night. People like me. People with secrets and plans and evidence that needed to be preserved before courage failed. I'd told Marcus I had to work late. Another lie to add to the collection we'd both been building. He'd believed me without question, the way he always did. Because in his mind I was still the trusting wife. Still the woman who swallowed his excuses and asked for nothing, and made his lies easy. He had no idea what was coming. Neither did Tasha. I thought about my mother's voice on the phone earlier that evening. "Are you sure about this, baby? Once you do it, you can't take it back." I don't want to take it back. There are quieter ways to end a marriage. Private ways. He didn't give me a private betrayal, Mama. Why should I give him a private ending? She'd been silent for a long moment. Then, "Your grandmother used to say that revenge is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. This isn't revenge. This is truth. There's a difference, is there?" I hadn't answered because I wasn't entirely sure. The line between justice and vengeance had blurred somewhere in the past 3 weeks. Somewhere between the GPS tracking and the silent rage and the careful documentation of my husband's affair with my best friend. Maybe I was drinking poison. Maybe this would destroy me as much as it destroyed them. But at least I'd die honest. I walked into the FedEx store and asked the employee to help me create a video presentation. He was young, maybe 22, with tired eyes and a name tag that read Jerome. He looked at me with the careful neutrality of someone who'd learned not to ask questions about what people brought in at 2 a.m. Needed to play automatically when the USB is inserted, I said. No clicking, no opening files. Just plug it in and it starts. I can set that up. You want it to loop? No, just play once, all the way through. He took the USB drive and got to work, his fingers quick on the keyboard. I watched him compile my evidence into a seamless presentation, GPS maps showing Marcus's car at Tasha's house with timestamps, screenshots of texts, the videos I'd taken. He added transitions, made it professional, turned my pain into a polished product. "This looks like some serious stuff," he said quietly, not looking at me. "It is. I'm sorry." Those 2 words, from a stranger at 2 a.m. in a FedEx store, almost broke me. I blinked hard, swallowed the emotion rising in my throat, and paid him in cash. He handed me the USB drive in a small envelope, and our eyes met for a second. 2 people who understood something about late-night desperation and the things we do when we've run out of gentle options. "Good luck," he said. I drove home and found Marcus asleep in our bed, sprawled on his back with one arm thrown over his head, peaceful and untroubled. I stood in the doorway watching him, trying to remember what it had felt like to love him, to trust him, to believe that we were building something real together. But those feelings were archaeological now, buried under layers of betrayal, accessible only through memory, no longer alive in my body. I slept on the couch that night. When he found me there in the morning, I told him I'd come home late and hadn't wanted to wake him. "You okay?" he asked, kissing my forehead. "You've been sleeping out here a lot lately. Just don't want to disturb you when I come in late." He accepted this without question, because Marcus lived in a world where his wife's discomfort was background noise, barely noticeable. Certainly not worth investigating. "Big day," he said, grinning. 36. "Getting old?" "Ancient," I said, and managed something like a smile. "Tasha's been texting me about this party. She won't tell me anything. You know what she's planning?" The casual way he said her name, Tasha, like she was just a friend, just a party planner, just someone who existed in our lives without complications, made something dark pulse behind my eyes. "I have no idea," I said. "She wanted to surprise you. She's good at that." He laughed, pulling on his training clothes. "I'm heading to the center for a few hours, then I'll be back to get ready. Party starts at 7, right?" 7, I confirmed. He kissed me goodbye, and I let him. And I wondered if he could taste the poison I'd been drinking. If betrayal left a residue on your lips that transferred to everyone you touched. After he left, I got ready with the deliberate care of a soldier preparing for battle. I'd bought a new dress for the occasion. Burgundy, fitted, elegant. The kind of dress that said, I'm in control, I'm beautiful, I'm not the woman you're going to pity. I did my makeup carefully, highlighting my eyes, making sure I looked powerful rather than broken. I twisted my hair into an elaborate updo and put on my grandmother's gold earrings, the ones I wore to important occasions, the ones that made me feel connected to something bigger than my own small disaster. In the mirror, I looked like someone who had her life together, like someone who was going to celebrate her husband's birthday with love and joy, and all the normal emotions that normal couples felt on normal occasions. The mask was perfect. I'd been practicing. Tasha had rented a private room at a restaurant in Midtown, upscale but not pretentious, with exposed brick walls and string lights, and a projector screen for the photo slideshow she'd told everyone she was preparing. She'd invited 60 people. Marcus's friends from the gym, my coworkers, people from church, family members, the community center kids he coached. An audience large enough to make this matter, small enough that everyone would see clearly. I arrived early. Tasha was already there, directing caterers and adjusting decorations, wearing a tight gold dress that showed every curve. She looked beautiful, I had to admit. She always did. That's what made her dangerous. Beauty and charm wrapped around a hollow center. A performer who'd perfected the role of loyal friend while stealing the lead actor behind the scenes. Aaliyah. She rushed over and hugged me, and I let her, feeling her arms around me and wondering how she did it. How she could touch me, knowing what she'd done. How she could smile and plan parties and send heart emojis while sleeping with my husband. Maybe she was a sociopath. Maybe she actually believed her own performance. Maybe it didn't matter. The place looks amazing, I said. I wanted it to be perfect for him. He deserves it, you know? He works so hard, he's so good to everyone. She stopped, seemed to realize she was gushing about my husband to me. I mean, you know, you're married to him. You know how special he is. I do, I said. I know exactly how special he is. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or the first whisper of suspicion. But then she smiled again, that practiced influencer smile, and whatever she'd felt disappeared behind the performance. Guests started arriving. Marcus showed up at 7 on the dot, genuinely surprised by the crowd, by the decorations, by the effort Tasha had put into celebrating him. He worked the room like the natural performer he was, hugging people, laughing, accepting birthday wishes with the easy charm that had made me fall in love with him 5 years ago. I watched him from across the room, drink in hand, playing my part. The devoted wife, the woman who stood by her man, the fool who didn't know she was being made a fool of in front of everyone she cared about. My mother arrived at 7:30, dressed in her Sunday best, her pastor's collar visible under her jacket. She found me immediately, and the look in her eyes was equal parts concern and steel. "You're really doing this," she said quietly. "I'm really doing this. I'll be right here when it's over." "I know." "Mama." At 8 o'clock, Tasha clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. "Okay, everyone. As you know, I put together a little birthday tribute for our guy Marcus. So if we could dim the lights and turn on the projector, this was the moment. The point of no return. I could stop it right now, could claim the USB drive had the wrong files, could preserve the illusion of our perfect life for everyone in this room, could take the high road, get a quiet divorce, let them continue their affair without consequences. But then I remembered the Thai food, and the key, and the silk robe, and the casual intimacy of their betrayal. I remembered every lie, every night I'd lied awake, every time I'd doubted myself and been made to feel crazy for trusting my instincts. I walked to the laptop controlling the projector. Tasha had stepped away to dim the lights, confident that her slideshow of happy Marcus memories was about to play. Instead, I pulled out my USB drive and inserted it before she could return. The projector flickered to life. The first image appeared on the screen, a GPS map showing Marcus's car at Tasha's house, dated and time-stamped. Then another, a pattern emerging in real time, undeniable and clear. The room went silent. Then the screenshots appeared. Text messages I'd photographed when Marcus had left his phone unlocked. "Baby, she's at work. Come over now. Can't stop thinking about you. This is getting harder to hide." The texts weren't explicit enough to be pornographic, but they were explicit enough to be obvious. And they were between Marcus and Tasha, their names at the top of the screen for everyone to see. I heard someone gasp. Heard chair scraping. Heard Tasha's voice from the back of the room. "What the? Aaliyah, what is this?" But I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes on the screen as the first video started to play. Marcus's car pulling into Tasha's driveway. Marcus getting out. Tasha opening the door in that silk robe. Their kiss. Easy, familiar, intimate. The second video played automatically. Marcus leaving her house 4 hours later. Her standing in the doorway watching him go, wearing his training shirt. Someone turned on the lights. I finally turned around. Marcus stood frozen, his face the color of old newspaper. Tasha was crying, mascara already running, her hands covering her mouth. Around the room, 60 people stared at the screen. At them. At me. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I walked to the microphone Tasha had set up for birthday toasts. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. Everything about me was steady because I'd practiced this moment in my head 1,000 times. "I want to thank Tasha for putting together this party," I said, "for all the effort she put into celebrating my husband. She's been very dedicated to making him happy. As you can all see," Marcus took a step toward me. "Aaliyah, please," I held up one finger. The same gesture from the hook, the universal sign for not yet. "I'm not finished." My voice carried through the speakers, huge and clear and impossible to ignore. "Marcus, you always told me you felt trapped in our marriage, that you needed freedom, that the commitment was suffocating you." I paused, let that sink in. "So I'm giving you what you wanted. You're free now, completely free." I took off my wedding ring, the diamond he'd saved for months to buy, the symbol of promises we'd both made and only I had kept, and set it on the table next to his birthday cake. "Happy birthday," I said. Then I walked out, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, my head high, my dignity intact, while 60 people watched and my husband tried to form words that wouldn't come, and my best friend sobbed into her hands. My mother followed me outside, wrapped her arms around me, and finally I cried. The parking lot was cool and dark, the Atlanta night air thick with humidity, and the distant sound of traffic on Peachtree Street. I stood there with my mother's arms around me, and the sobs that came out of me were ugly and raw. Nothing like the controlled performance I'd just given inside. These were the sounds of something breaking that had been holding itself together too long, the release of 3 weeks of surveillance and silence and sleeping on couches while lying next to my betrayer. "Let it out, baby," my mother whispered, her hand steady on my back. "Let it all out." Behind us, I heard the restaurant door open. Voices spilled out, shocked, angry, confused. I heard someone say my name, heard Marcus calling for me. But I couldn't turn around. Not yet. Not until I'd cried out enough of the poison to stand upright again. "Aaliyah!" Marcus's voice was desperate now, closer. "Aaliyah, please, we need to talk about this." My mother stepped away from me and turned to face him. And when Pastor Aaliyah Carter positioned herself between someone and their target, she became something biblical. Something immovable. "You need to step back, Marcus. She's my wife. She was your wife. Past tense. And right now, she doesn't want to talk to you." My mother's voice had that quality it got when she was preaching, when she was calling down judgment, when she was protecting someone she loved. "You've said enough with your actions. Let your consequences speak for themselves. Pastor Carter, please, this is between me and Aaliyah. Nothing is between you and Aaliyah anymore. You made sure of that." She stood her ground, this 5'4" woman in a pastor's collar facing down a man who could have physically moved her but wouldn't dare. "Now walk away before you make this worse than you already have." I heard him breathing hard, heard the struggle happening in him, the urge to push past, to force the conversation, to make me listen to whatever explanation he'd cobbled together in the past 5 minutes. But my mother's presence was a wall he couldn't cross, and eventually his footsteps retreated. When I finally looked up, I saw the scene unfolding like a painting of Judgment Day. Guests were streaming out of the restaurant, some glancing at me with pity, others with admiration, a few with the guilty embarrassment of people who'd witnessed something too intimate, too devastating to process. Marcus stood by his car, surrounded by his friends from the gym, all of them talking at once. His mother was crying. His brother had his hand on Marcus's shoulder but was looking at me with something that might have been respect. And Tasha was alone. That's what I noticed most. She stood by herself near the entrance, her gold dress catching the light, her face streaked with mascara, and not one person was comforting her. Not one friend approached. Everyone had seen what she was, and in that moment, they'd made their choice about which side of this disaster they'd stand on. My coworkers found me first. Kendra pushed through the small crowd that had gathered, followed by Brenda and 2 other nurses from the trauma unit. They formed a protective circle around me without being asked, their presence a wall of solidarity. That said, "We've got you. You're not alone. We understand." "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen," Kendra said quietly. "And I watched you save a man's life with a collapsed lung and no backup last month." "I don't feel badass," I whispered. "I feel destroyed." "You can be both," Brenda said, squeezing my hand. "Destroyed and badass. They're not mutually exclusive." Marcus was trying to make his way toward me again, but more people were blocking his path now. Not deliberately, just the natural flow of a crowd that had collectively decided he'd lost the right to easy access to his wife. He was calling my name, his voice cracking with what might have been genuine emotion or might have been panic at the public nature of his exposure. I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't care anymore. Tasha's voice cut through the chaos. "Aaliyah!" She was pushing through people now, desperate, her composure completely shattered. "Aaliyah, please let me explain." I turned to face her then, and whatever she saw in my expression made her stop walking, made her freeze where she was, 5 feet away, close enough to see the destruction on her face but far enough that I didn't have to smell her perfume or hear her breathing or be touched by any part of her. "Explain what?" My voice was steady again, cold, surgical, the nurse voice, the one I used when delivering bad news. "Explain how you justified it? Explain how you looked me in the eye every day while sleeping with my husband? Explain which part, Tasha? It wasn't. It didn't mean anything. Stop." The word came out like a slap. "Don't insult me with that. If it didn't mean anything, you wouldn't have risked everything for it. Own what you did. At least give me that." Her mouth opened and closed. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing watching them. No satisfaction, no pity, nothing but a vast emptiness where my affection for her used to live. "I loved you," I said simply. "I trusted you with everything. You were supposed to be my sister. I am your sister." "No." I shook my head. "Sisters don't do this. Friends don't do this. You're just someone I used to know who decided her ego was more important than my life." Someone in the crowd was recording on their phone. I saw the red light, saw the lens pointed at us, and I knew this moment was being captured for posterity, for social media, for the entire digital world to judge and dissect and turn into entertainment. A year ago, that would have horrified me. Tonight, I didn't care. Let them see. Let everyone see what betrayal looked like when it was finally exposed to light. "I'm sorry," Tasha sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Aaliyah. I never meant to hurt you." "Yes, you did." My mother's voice came from beside me, quiet but cutting. "You meant to hurt her every single time you let him into your house, every time you lied to her face, every time you texted her while he was in your bed. You meant it, Tasha. Don't you dare claim otherwise." Tasha looked at my mother, and whatever she saw there made her crumble. She turned and ran, not walked, ran to her car, fumbling with her keys, desperate to escape the judgment she could feel pressing in from all sides. Marcus tried one more time. "Aaliyah, please, can we just go somewhere and talk? Alone?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to find the man I'd married. The one who'd promised to love and cherish me, to forsake all others, to build a life with me that was honest and true and worth the sacrifice of my independent self. But that man wasn't there. Maybe he'd never existed. Maybe I'd built him in my imagination out of potential and hope and the desperate desire to believe that love was enough. There's nothing to talk about, Marcus. You made your choices. I made mine. We're done. You can't just... We're married, Aaliyah. We have to at least try... Try what? Counseling? I almost laughed. You think I'm going to sit in a therapist's office and work through trust exercises with a man who's been screwing my best friend? You think there's a path back from this? People get through affairs. People get through affairs when both partners want to save the marriage, when there's remorse, when the cheater didn't choose the person their spouse trusted most in the world. I took a breath, steadied myself. You didn't just cheat on me, Marcus. You chose Tasha. You chose her repeatedly, deliberately, knowing exactly what it would destroy. That's not a mistake. That's not a moment of weakness. That's a decision you made over and over again. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the wife who works long hours and doesn't ask questions and makes your life comfortable. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you would have protected me. Instead, you gutted me and left me to bleed out while you played house with her. His face crumpled. Real tears now. Not the angry defensive kind, but the ugly realization kind. The kind that came when a man finally understood that his actions had consequences he couldn't charm his way out of. But I felt nothing watching him cry. The part of me that would have softened, that would have comforted him even while he was hurting me, had died somewhere between the GPS tracker and tonight. People were leaving now. The party officially over. The celebration turned funeral. Some stopped to hug me, to whisper support, to press their phone numbers into my hand and tell me to call if I needed anything. Others avoided eye contact, uncomfortable with the rawness of what they'd witnessed, eager to get home and process this disaster in private. Marcus's mother approached me, her eyes red and swollen. "Aaliyah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. If I'd known..." "I know, Mrs. Carter. This isn't your fault. He's my son. But what he did, there's no excuse for it." She hugged me, and I let her, because she'd always been kind to me, because she'd welcomed me into her family with genuine love, because she was a victim of this too in her own way. You deserved so much better. After she left, it was just me, my mother, and my co-workers standing in the parking lot. The restaurant staff were cleaning up inside, probably grateful the drama had moved outside, probably already composing the story they'd tell about the birthday party that became an execution. My phone started buzzing. Text messages flooding in from people who'd been at the party, from people who'd already seen the videos posted online, from numbers I didn't recognize. The internet was doing its thing, turning my private devastation into public spectacle, spreading the evidence across platforms faster than I could track. I opened Instagram and saw that the videos were already there, posted by at least 3 different people, each with hundreds of views climbing into thousands. The comments were brutal, iconic. "This is how you handle a cheater. The wife is a queen. The friend is trash." That man really thought he could get away with it. Anybody else notice the friend was crying but nobody comforted her? That's what happens when you're a snake. I would have done worse. She showed restraint. Tasha's Instagram was being flooded with comments on her recent posts. The ones where she'd posed with me, arm around my shoulders, captions about friendship and loyalty and sisters for life. People were calling her every name imaginable, attacking her business, her character, her appearance. It was vicious and ugly and exactly what I'd known would happen when I made this public. Did I feel guilty about that? Maybe I should have. Maybe the old Aaliyah would have. But the new Aaliyah, the one forged in surveillance and lies and silent rage, felt only a cold satisfaction. She'd wanted to be seen, wanted to be admired, wanted everyone to think she was living a perfect life. Now everyone was seeing her exactly as she was. "You ready to go home?" my mother asked gently. "I can't go home. That's his house too. Then come to mine. I'll make up the guest room." I nodded, suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline draining out of me and leaving nothing but a vast weariness. Kendra hugged me goodbye, promising to cover any shifts I needed. Brenda pressed a business card for a divorce lawyer into my hand. "She's the best. Tell her I sent you. She'll take care of you." My mother drove me to her house in Decatur, a modest ranch with a garden full of tomatoes and prayers. I sat in her passenger seat watching Atlanta pass by the window. This city I'd loved. This city where I'd built my life. This city that would now forever be the place where my marriage died and my dignity was reborn. Inside my mother's house, she made me chamomile tea I didn't drink and ran me a bath I didn't take. I just sat on her couch, still in my burgundy dress, and stared at nothing while my phone continued buzzing with messages I couldn't bring myself to read. "You did the right thing," my mother said, sitting beside me. Did I? Or did I just blow up my life for revenge? You exposed the truth. That's not revenge. That's justice. She took my hand. And sometimes justice looks brutal, because the sin was brutal first. I leaned against her shoulder, and she held me the way she'd held me when my father left, when I'd failed my first nursing exam, when life had been hard before and would be hard again, but we'd survived it together. "What do I do now?" I whispered. "Now? Now you rest. Tomorrow you start rebuilding, but tonight you rest." So I did. I slept in my mother's guest room, in sheets that smelled like lavender and safety, and I dreamed of nothing at all. I woke up at 5:47 a.m. to silence. No alarm set for 13 minutes before the hour. No Marcus rolling over to touch my hip. No familiar weight of someone else in the bed creating gravity I'd learned to sleep around. Just me, alone in my mother's guest room, with early morning light filtering through curtains that didn't belong to me, in a life that didn't feel like mine anymore. My phone sat on the nightstand like a loaded weapon. I'd turned it off before going to sleep, unable to handle the constant buzzing of notifications, the endless stream of opinions about my destroyed marriage. But I couldn't avoid it forever. The world was still turning, even if mine had stopped. I turned it on and watched the messages flood in. Hundreds of them. Text messages, Instagram DMs, Facebook messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, emails to my work account that someone had somehow found. The video from the party had gone viral. Actually viral. Not internet exaggeration viral. 2 million views across various platforms. News outlets were picking it up. Atlanta nurse exposes. Husband's affair in devastating birthday party. Reveal. Woman's public takedown of cheating husband and best friend goes viral. This is how you handle betrayal. Watch what this wife did. I was a headline, a hashtag, a moment. My face was everywhere. Screenshots from the video, zoomed in on my expression as I'd taken off my wedding ring. Frozen in that moment of controlled devastation that apparently resonated with millions of strangers who didn't know me, but felt like they understood exactly what I'd been through. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of women sharing their own stories of betrayal, tagging friends, declaring me a hero, an icon, a symbol of something larger than my individual pain. This is what self-respect looks like. She didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't beg. She just presented facts and walked away. That's power. The way nobody comforted the friend? That's how you know everybody already knew she was trash. But there were other comments too. Cruel ones. Comments calling me bitter, vindictive, suggesting I must have been a terrible wife if Marcus had to look elsewhere. Comments speculating about my body, my face, whether I was woman enough to keep a man. The internet was both my biggest supporter and my harshest critic, and I was learning in real time that being a symbol meant surrendering control over your own narrative. Marcus had texted 17 times. I scrolled through them without opening, just reading the previews. Please call me. We need to talk. I'm so sorry. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. I love you. Please just let me explain. People are destroying me online. Aaliyah, please make it stop. That last one almost made me laugh. Make it stop. Like I had that power. Like I controlled the internet's judgment. Like I was responsible for managing his consequences. Tasha had texted too, but only twice. I'm sorry. And then, 6 hours later, my business is ruined because of you. I hope you're happy. The audacity of that second message, the sheer refusal to accept responsibility, would have shocked me a month ago. Now it just confirmed what I already knew. Tasha wasn't sorry she'd betrayed me. She was sorry she'd been caught. I got up and found my mother in the kitchen, already dressed for the day, making breakfast she knew I wouldn't eat. This was her love language. Practical care, eggs and toast, feeding the body when the soul was too broken to ask for nourishment. How are you feeling? She asked, sliding a plate across the counter. Like I'm living in someone else's life. In a way, you are. The old life is gone. This is the new one. She poured coffee, added the exact amount of cream I liked. The question is, what do you want the new one to look like? I picked at the toast, tearing it into small pieces I didn't eat. I don't know. I can't go back to the house, not yet. I can't face work. Everyone's probably seen the video. I can't, my voice cracked. I don't know who I am without the marriage, without the friendship, without the life I thought I had. You're Aaliyah Grace Carter. Nurse, daughter, woman of faith and strength. You're the same person you were before you met Marcus, before you met Tasha, before any of this happened. She sat beside me, her hand covering mine. They didn't make you. They can't unmake you. You're still here, baby. Still whole. Even if you feel broken. I don't feel whole. I feel like I'm scattered across the internet in pieces. Like everyone has a part of me and I'll never be able to gather myself back together. Then don't gather the old pieces. Build something new. It sounded good in theory. Reconstruction, rebirth, the phoenix rising from ashes. But phoenixes were mythological creatures. And I was just a 33-year-old woman sitting in her mother's kitchen, wearing yesterday's makeup and a borrowed nightgown, trying to figure out how to exist in a world where her private pain had become public entertainment. The divorce lawyer, Susan Michaels, the one Brenda had recommended, called at 9 a.m. Ms. Carter, I've seen what happened. I'd like to represent you if you'll have me, and I want you to know, with evidence like that, this will be the fastest, cleanest divorce I've ever processed. He has no leverage. None. We met that afternoon in her office in Buckhead. Susan was exactly what I needed. Sharp, efficient, no nonsense. A woman who'd probably seen 1,000 betrayals and wasn't interested in dwelling on the emotional aspects when there was legal work to be done. Here's what we're going to do, she said, spreading papers across her desk. File for divorce on grounds of adultery. Georgia's a no-fault state, but establishing cause affects alimony and asset division. With your evidence, we can argue for a favorable settlement. She looked up at me. What do you want, Aaliyah? Do you want to hurt him financially, or do you just want out? I want out. I don't want his money. I don't want anything that ties me to him longer than necessary. Even though you're entitled to it? You supported him while he built his training business. You have a right to compensation, I know. But I don't want it. I want a clean break. I want to walk away knowing I don't owe him anything, and he doesn't owe me anything except signatures on divorce papers. She studied me for a moment. You're sure? Because once you sign, I'm sure. She nodded, making notes. We'll file this week. With his cooperation, which I suspect we'll get, given the circumstances, you could be divorced in 31 days. Georgia has a mandatory waiting period, but with clear evidence of adultery and no disputes over assets, it's fast. 31 days. 1 month from wife to ex-wife. From Mrs. Carter to just Aaliyah. From we to me. I signed the preliminary papers, and walking out of that office felt like the first real breath I'd taken since seeing Marcus's car in Tasha's driveway. This was movement. This was progress. This was choosing myself when everyone else had chosen differently. My next stop was an apartment complex in Midtown, a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a doorman who looked like he belonged in a magazine spread. I'd found the listing online that morning. 1 bedroom, 10th floor, available immediately. It was more expensive than I needed, more stylish than I'd normally choose, but it was mine. Not ours, not a compromise. Not a space where I'd have to negotiate about paint colors or furniture placement or whether we could afford it. Just mine. I'll take it, I told the leasing agent after a 5-minute tour. She blinked, surprised. Don't you want to think about it? See other units? No, this one. I'll sign today. I moved in 4 days later with nothing but clothes and personal items I'd retrieved from the house while Marcus was at work. My mother had offered to come with me, but I'd gone alone, walking through rooms that held 4 years of memories that now felt contaminated. I took my books, my nursing things, my grandmother's jewelry box, my clothes. I left everything else. The furniture we'd picked out together, the wedding gifts, the framed photos, the kitchen gadgets, all the material evidence of a life I didn't want anymore. Marcus had left a note on the kitchen counter. Aaliyah, please. We need to talk. I'm staying at my brother's. The house is yours if you want it. Everything is yours. I'm so sorry. I threw the note away without finishing it. The apartment was empty when I moved in. Just white walls and hardwood floors and possibility. I'd ordered a bed online, a couch, basic furniture that would arrive over the next week. But that first night, I slept on an air mattress in the middle of the living room, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and I felt more at home than I had in months. Work was harder. I'd taken a week off, using vacation time I'd accumulated but never taken because I'd always been the reliable one, the one who covered shifts, the one who never called out. But I couldn't hide forever. Couldn't avoid my coworkers and their questions and their pity disguised as concern. When I finally walked back into the trauma unit, the response was immediate. The nurses gathered around me, a protective wall of solidarity. Kendra hugged me. Brenda squeezed my shoulder. Even Dr. Okonkwo stopped by the nurses' station to say, "Welcome back, Aaliyah. We missed you. I'm sorry about all the drama," I said. "I know everyone probably saw—" "Stop," Kendra interrupted. "You don't apologize for his actions. You did what you had to do, and honestly, you gave half the women in this hospital permission to stop accepting less than they deserve. My DMs have been full of women thanking you for showing them what self-respect looks like." It was strange being thanked for my devastation, but I was learning that pain had a purpose when you let it transform you instead of destroy you. My hurt was becoming other women's hope, and there was something sacred in that alchemy. The weeks blurred together, a montage of small victories and quiet moments of rebuilding. I went to therapy, sitting in a calm office with a woman named Dr. Patel, who helped me untangle the difference between my worth and Marcus's choices. "His affair doesn't mean you weren't enough," she told me. "It means he wasn't enough, for himself, for you, for the vows he made. That's his failure, not yours." I started running in the mornings, something I'd never done before, pushing my body until my lungs burned and my legs ached, and the only thing I could think about was breath and pavement and the next step forward. The physical pain was clean, honest, something I could control when everything else felt chaotic. I changed my hair, cut off the long braids I'd worn for years, and got a tapered natural cut that felt bold and new, and like the visual representation of letting go. The woman in the mirror looked different, stronger, rawer, more herself than she'd been in years. I unfollowed Tasha on all social media but didn't block her. I wanted to see what happened, wanted to watch the consequences play out. Her business had taken a massive hit. Sponsorships dropped, followers decreased by thousands, comments on every post brutal and unforgiving. She'd posted an apology video that everyone agreed was self-serving and fake, more concerned with her image than genuine remorse. The internet had canceled her, and I felt nothing watching it happen. Not satisfaction, not pity, just a distant acknowledgement that actions had consequences, and hers were playing out in real time. Marcus tried to reach out a few more times, through mutual friends, through his mother, once showing up at the hospital until security escorted him away at my request. But I had nothing to say to him. Susan was handling the divorce. There was no reason for us to speak, no words that would undo what he'd done or make sense of why he'd done it. Some questions don't have answers worth hearing. 3 weeks after the party, I enrolled in a graduate program for nursing administration. I'd been putting it off for years. telling myself I was too busy, too tired, that I'd do it eventually. But eventually had become now, and I threw myself into applications and entrance exams with the focused energy of someone who needed a goal bigger than surviving. I got accepted on my first try. My mother came to my apartment to celebrate, bringing champagne and her famous peach cobbler, and we sat on my new couch, navy blue, modern, nothing like the beige compromise furniture Marcus and I had chosen, and toasted to new beginnings. "I'm proud of you," she said. "Not for how you handled the party, though that was impressive. I'm proud of how you're handling the after, the quiet work of rebuilding. That's where real strength lives. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm pretending to be okay until hopefully one day I actually am. That's called healing, baby. It's not linear. Some days you'll feel powerful. Some days you'll feel destroyed. And both are allowed." She squeezed my hand. "But you're still standing, still moving forward, still choosing yourself. That's all that matters." That night, after she left, I stood at my 10th floor window looking out at Atlanta's skyline, the city lights spreading out like a constellation of other people's lives, other people's dreams, other people's heartbreaks that I'd never know about. Somewhere out there, Marcus was living whatever life he'd built without me. Somewhere out there, Tasha was dealing with her own consequences. But here, in this moment, in this apartment, in this new life I was constructing from the rubble of the old one, I was alone but not lonely, broken but healing, changed but not destroyed. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 months ago, the one who'd woken up to Marcus's alarm and trusted blindly and made herself small to keep the peace. I didn't miss her. She'd been kind and loyal and loving, but she'd also been naive, had sacrificed her own needs until she'd almost forgotten she had them, had confused accommodation with devotion. The woman I was becoming was harder, sharper, less willing to bend. But she was also more honest, more aware of her worth, more determined to build a life that served her instead of serving everyone else. I picked up my phone and opened Instagram, posted a photo of my city view with a simple caption, "Chapter 1 of the rest of my life." "Atlanta, let's do this." The comments came immediately, hundreds of them. Words of encouragement, stories of survival, women telling me I'd inspired them to leave their own bad situations. I read a few, then put the phone away. Their support was meaningful, but it wasn't what would sustain me. That had to come from inside, from the slow, daily work of choosing myself over and over again until it became natural instead of revolutionary. I was 33 years old, divorced, internet famous for all the wrong reasons. Starting over in ways I'd never imagined I'd have to, but I was free. Finally, completely, honestly free. And that freedom, I was learning, was worth everything it had cost. 6 months after the party, I stopped checking the internet for mentions of my name. The videos had cycled through their viral peak and settled into internet mythology, occasionally resurfacing when someone made a greatest public call-outs of all time compilation, but no longer dominating my daily existence. The woman in those videos felt like a character I'd played once, someone I could look at with distance and a strange kind of respect, but no longer had to embody every waking moment. Life had found its rhythm again. Different rhythm, different life, but rhythm nonetheless. I'd settled into the apartment, turned it into something that felt like home rather than just an escape. Plants on the windowsill that I actually remembered to water. Art on the walls that I'd chosen alone, without considering anyone else's taste. A bookshelf full of novels I'd been meaning to read for years, and was finally getting through. The space reflected only me, my aesthetic, my priorities, my peace. And there was something quietly revolutionary about that. Graduate school was harder than I'd anticipated, but in ways that felt productive rather than destructive. The coursework pushed me, forced me to think about nursing leadership and healthcare systems, and how to create change in institutions resistant to it. I was learning to advocate not just for individual patients but for entire communities, to see the bigger picture while still honoring the granular human details that had always drawn me to medicine. My cohort was small, 12 women and 3 men, all of us juggling full-time work with classes and clinical hours, all of us exhausted and caffeinated and bonded by the shared experience of pursuing something difficult, because it mattered more than comfort. They knew who I was. Impossible not to, given the internet. But they treated me like a colleague rather than a curiosity. And I was grateful for their professionalism. One of them, a woman named Simone who'd been an ER nurse for 15 years, had pulled me aside after our first class. "Hey, I just want you to know, what you did took courage. My ex cheated on me for 2 years, and I found out from his other woman's husband. I confronted him privately, and he gaslit me so hard I almost believed I was crazy. Seeing you control the narrative the way you did, that healed something in me I didn't know still hurt." Stories like that found me regularly. Women approaching me in coffee shops, at the hospital, in the grocery store, sharing their own betrayals, their own moments of choosing themselves, thanking me for giving them permission to stop being accommodating and start being honest. It was uncomfortable at first. I didn't want to be a symbol, didn't want my pain turned into inspiration porn for strangers. But I was learning that pain shared became pain divided, and if my devastation could help someone else find their strength, maybe it hadn't been meaningless. The divorce finalized in exactly 31 days, just like Susan had promised. Marcus didn't contest anything, didn't fight for the house or the savings or any of the material possessions we'd accumulated. He just signed the papers and disappeared from my legal life as easily as he disappeared from my emotional one. I heard about him occasionally through the grapevine. He'd moved to a different part of Atlanta, was still teaching Jiu Jitsu, had apparently quit social media entirely after the internet had dragged him mercilessly for months. Part of me wondered if he'd learned anything, if the public humiliation had sparked some kind of growth or self-awareness, but mostly I didn't think about him at all. He'd become like a character from a book I'd read years ago, vaguely familiar, emotionally distant, no longer relevant to my current story. Tasha was a different situation. She'd tried to rebuild her brand, rebranding herself as a redemption arc influencer who talked about mistakes and growth and learning from your worst moments. The internet wasn't buying it. Her follower count had stabilized at about 1/3 of what it used to be, mostly people who loved drama and wanted to watch her continue to implode. Her skincare line had been dropped by every retailer. Her engagement had plummeted. She'd posted a video last month titled "The Friend Who Destroyed My Life," where she'd painted herself as the victim of my vindictive public, shaming, conveniently leaving out the part where she'd been sleeping with my husband for months. The comments had eviscerated her. "Girl, you destroyed your own life. The audacity to play victim when you were the villain. Aaliyah didn't destroy you. She just held up a mirror and you didn't, like what you saw." I'd watched the video once, all the way through, studying her face for signs of genuine remorse. I hadn't found any. Just performance. Just another version of Tasha, crafting a narrative that centered her pain rather than acknowledging the pain she'd caused. I'd closed the video, blocked her on all platforms, and moved on. She didn't deserve any more of my mental real estate. Work had become my sanctuary again. The trauma unit was where I made sense, where my hypervigilance was an asset rather than a liability, where I could control outcomes through skill and knowledge and quick thinking. I'd been promoted to senior charge nurse, a role that came with more responsibility and more influence over how the unit ran. I used it to push for better staffing ratios, better mental health support for nurses, better protocols for handling the emotional toll of trauma work. Dr. Okonkwo had become an unexpected ally. "You've changed since everything happened," he'd told me one night during a rare quiet moment in the break room. Not worse, just different. More assertive, more willing to push back when something doesn't serve the patient or the team. "I guess I learned I don't have to make myself small to be loved," I'd said. "And if I don't have to do it in my personal life, I don't have to do it here either." He'd nodded, smiling. "The unit's better for it. You're better for it." The hardest part of healing was learning to trust again. Not trust in other people. That would come eventually, with time and therapy and new relationships built on honesty. But trust in myself. Trust that my instincts were valid, that my boundaries mattered, that my needs weren't selfish or excessive or asking too much. Dr. Patel had worked with me on this extensively. "You blamed yourself for not seeing it sooner," she'd said during one session. "But you did see it. Your body knew. Your intuition knew. You just didn't trust yourself enough to act on what you knew until you had undeniable proof." Because I'd been taught that trusting women is paranoid. that questioning your husband means you're insecure, that if you're a good wife, you don't need evidence. You just believe. Exactly. And unlearning that conditioning is the work. Learning that your intuition isn't paranoia, that your standards aren't unreasonable, that requiring honesty and fidelity isn't asking too much. It's asking for the absolute minimum. I started dating again, cautiously, through apps that felt simultaneously hopeful and exhausting. Most first dates went nowhere. Nice enough men who didn't spark anything, or men who recognized me from the videos and wanted to date the badass wife rather than actually know me. But there were a few that surprised me. Conversations that felt real. Connections that reminded me I was capable of opening up again, even if I wasn't ready for anything serious yet. One guy, Antoine, a high school teacher who coached basketball and had kind eyes, made it to a third date before I explained my situation. I'm kind of internet famous for divorcing my husband very publicly after he cheated with my best friend. He'd nodded slowly. I know. I saw the video when it went viral. I'd tensed, waiting for the judgment or the questions or the weird fascination. Instead, he'd said, "That must have been incredibly painful. I'm sorry you went through that." Not, "You're so brave," or "That was epic," or any of the other responses people usually gave. Just acknowledgement of pain and empathy for it. We'd dated for 2 months before mutually agreeing we were better as friends. But the experience taught me something valuable. Not everyone would fetishize my trauma. Some people would just see me as human, complicated and healing, and that was enough. My mother remained my anchor. We had dinner every Sunday at her house, a ritual that grounded me when everything else felt uncertain. She'd stopped asking how I was healing and started asking what I was building, which felt like a more useful question. We talked about my graduate work, about her congregation's needs, about books and recipes and the small details of life that mattered when you weren't drowning in drama. "You seem lighter," she'd said one Sunday, studying me across her kitchen table. Not happy yet, maybe, but lighter. "Like you're carrying less." "I am," I'd agreed. "I'm not carrying his secrets anymore, or her lies, or the weight of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I'm just carrying me now, and that's so much easier." She'd smiled, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "That's all you were ever supposed to carry, baby. Just yourself. Everyone else is responsible for their own weight." 8 months after the party, Marcus's mother reached out. A text message, careful and kind. "Aaliyah, I know you don't owe me anything, but I'd love to see you if you're willing. Just coffee, just to talk. I miss you." I'd stared at that message for 3 days before responding. Mrs. Carter had been collateral damage in all of this. She'd lost a daughter-in-law she'd loved, had watched her son's character revealed in the worst possible way, had been forced to reconcile the man she'd raised with the man he'd become. None of that was her fault, but seeing her meant confronting parts of my old life that I'd worked hard to move past. But she'd been kind to me always, had welcomed me into her family with genuine warmth, had taught me how to make her famous mac and cheese, and told me stories about Marcus as a boy, before he'd learned to compartmentalize and lie and choose ego over integrity. I met her at a quiet cafe in Decatur. She looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that spoke of disappointment rather than physical exhaustion. We hugged carefully, both of us navigating the awkwardness of caring about each other despite the circumstances that should have severed our connection. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, once we'd sat down with our coffee. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either. How are you?" "Honestly, I'm okay. Better than okay some days. I'm rebuilding." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so sorry, Aaliyah, for what he did, for how he hurt you. I raised him better than that. I thought I raised him better than that." "You did raise him better. He just made choices that contradicted what you taught him. That's not your failure. That's his. Still, you deserved so much better than what my son gave you." We talked for 2 hours, about her grief over losing me as a daughter-in-law, about Marcus's refusal to do any real self-examination about why he'd blown up his life, about how she was learning to love her son while being deeply disappointed in his choices. It was healing in an unexpected way, this conversation. Not closure exactly, but acknowledgement. Witnessing. The chance to be seen as more than just the viral video wife by someone who'd known me before the cameras. When we hugged goodbye, she said, "I hope someday you find someone who deserves you, who sees how extraordinary you are and protects that instead of taking advantage of it. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. I hope so too." Fall arrived in Atlanta with cooler temperatures and changing leaves, and I found myself running in Piedmont Park in the mornings, watching the city wake up around me. One morning, about 10 months after everything had fallen apart, I stopped at the lake to catch my breath and checked my phone. A text from an unknown number. "Hey Aaliyah, this is Simone from your graduate program. A few of us are getting together for drinks Friday if you want to come. No pressure, but we'd love to have you." An invitation. Simple, uncomplicated, just people inviting me to be part of their lives because they enjoyed my company, not because I was a viral moment or a cautionary tale or a symbol of anything larger than myself. I texted back, "I'd love to. Send me the details." That Friday, I went to the bar and met my classmates, people who knew the worst thing that had ever happened to me, but chose to focus on who I was becoming instead of who I'd been when everything broke. We talked about coursework and hospital politics and dating disasters and good books and bad TV, and at some point I realized I was laughing. Genuinely laughing. Not performing joy or pretending to be okay, but actually experiencing lightness. Walking home that night, slightly buzzed and genuinely happy, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. The one who'd woken up to Marcus's alarm and trusted blindly and made herself small. The one who'd driven past Tasha's house and seen the beginning of her world ending. The one who'd stood in that parking lot with evidence in her hand and a choice to make about how this story would end. I didn't regret the choice I'd made. The public exposure had been brutal, but it had also been honest. It had given me control over my narrative when everything else felt chaotic. It had said, "I see what you did, everyone sees what you did, and you don't get to gaslight me or rewrite history or make this my fault." But more than that, it had given me permission to stop performing. To stop being the accommodating wife, the understanding friend, the woman who made everyone else's comfort her responsibility. The exposure had burned away the parts of me that existed only to please others, and what remained was rawer but realer, harder but truer. I got home to my apartment, my space, my sanctuary, my evidence of survival, and stood at the window looking out at Atlanta's skyline. The city that had witnessed my destruction and my reconstruction. The city where I'd lost my marriage but found myself. My phone buzzed. A notification. Someone had tagged me in a post. Another one of those inspiring women compilations, using a screenshot from the video with the caption, "This is what choosing yourself looks like." I used to hate those posts. Hate seeing my pain commodified. My worst moment turned into motivation for strangers. But tonight, looking at that image of myself, standing at a microphone with my head high and my dignity intact, I felt something close to pride. That woman in the video had been destroyed and had chosen to destroy beautifully, had taken her power back in the only way available to her, had refused to be gaslit or diminished or erased. And this woman, the one standing at the window 10 months later, had taken that destruction and built something new, had learned to trust herself again, had discovered that love didn't require sacrifice of self, had proven that you could lose your marriage and find your peace. And the peace was worth more than the marriage ever was. I opened Instagram and scrolled to the video, my video, the one that had changed everything. Read through some of the comments, the ones from women who'd left their own bad situations after watching me leave mine, the ones who said I'd given them courage, the ones who said they'd watched it when they needed reminding that they deserved better. Then I typed my own comment, months late but exactly on time. To everyone who saw this video and felt something shift inside them, I see you. Your pain matters. Your boundaries matter. You deserve honesty, fidelity, respect, and love that doesn't require you to ignore your intuition or make yourself small. I lost my marriage that night, but I found something more valuable. Myself. And if you're reading this while trying to decide whether to stay or go, whether to speak up or stay silent, whether to accept less than you deserve or demand better, I hope you choose yourself. Every single time. You're worth it. I promise you're worth it. I posted it, then put my phone away. Sat down on my couch with a cup of tea and the textbook I needed to read for Monday's class. Outside, Atlanta hummed with Friday night energy. People living their lives, making their choices, building their stories. And inside, in my 10th floor apartment with my plants and my books and my hard-won peace, I was doing the same. The last frame of my story wasn't the party. It wasn't the exposure or the viral videos or the moment everything fell apart. It was this. A woman alone in her apartment, drinking tea, reading about healthcare systems, occasionally smiling at nothing in particular, because she'd learned that happiness didn't require an audience. That peace was quiet. That healing looked like ordinary moments strung together until one day you realized you'd built a life that felt like yours. I'd lost my marriage, that night 10 months ago. But I'd found something, infinitely more valuable. I'd found myself. And I was never letting her go again.